If I asked you to close your eyes right now and picture the ultimate symbol of goodness, I'm talking absolute, selfless, unquestionable compassion, who pops into your head? For millions, maybe billions of people, the image is instant. It's a tiny, weathered woman, barely 5 feet tall, wrapped in a white sari with 3 blue stripes.
The saint of the gutters?
Exactly. She's holding the hand of a dying man in the slums of Kolkata. She is Mother Teresa.
It's an image that's just, burned into the collective consciousness of the 20th century. You're talking about a Nobel Peace Prize winner, a woman voted the most admired person in the world multiple times.
Right.
To her supporters, she wasn't just a nun. She was a living saint, an embodiment of divine love in a world that had completely forgotten the poor.
That's the icon. That's the stained glass window version we all grew up with.
But
And here is where it gets really interesting and honestly a little uncomfortable. There's a completely different image of her.
oh, absolutely, a completely different one.
One that definitely doesn't fit on a prayer card.
That's right. If you dig into the archives, into the medical journals, and the accounts of some of her harshest critics, you find a description of a religious fundamentalist.
You hear Christopher Hitchens calling her a hell's angel.
Yes. And you find accusations of gross medical negligence, the fetishization of suffering, and, millions of dollars vanishing into a financial black hole.
It is such a jarring contrast. On one hand, the greatest humanitarian of the century. On the other, a woman accused of being a friend of poverty rather than a friend of the poor. So the question we have to grapple with today is, who was she really? Was she a saint, a sinner, or something infinitely more complex?
And that is the mission of this deep dive. We are going to try to look past the halo and the headlines to find the real woman, Agnes Bojaxhiu.
Right.
We're going to track her journey from a comfortable home in the Ottoman Empire to the streets of India. We're going to unpack the incredible speed of her rise to global fame, and we are going to unflinchingly examine the controversies that have, scarred her legacy.
And we've got a stack of sources today that is pretty intense. We're talking authorized biographies, Vatican documents regarding her canonization.
Sure, the official stuff.
But also the critical investigations, documentaries like Hell's Angel, articles from the Lancet Medical Journal, and transcripts from some very critical exposés.
It's a complex story. It's not black and white. It involves geopolitics, theology, media manipulation, and a secret spiritual darkness that she hid for 50 years.
So let's start at the beginning. Because before she was Mother Teresa, she was just a girl named Agnes. And frankly, her childhood wasn't what I expected.
No.
I kind of assumed she was born into poverty, which is why she connected with it so well. But that's not true, is it?
Not at all.
Right.
And this is the first myth we really need to bust. Agnes Bojaxhiu was born on August 26, 1910, in Skopje.
Okay.
Now, today, that's North Macedonia, but back then, it was part of the crumbling Ottoman Empire. And the Bojaxhiu family, they weren't scraping by. They were doing very, very well.
So paint the picture for me. We aren't talking about a peasant girl in a village.
Far from it. Picture a substantial house in Skopje. Her father, Nicolae Bojaxhiu, was a successful businessman. He was involved in construction, he owned a wholesale food business and a pharmacy business. He was a power broker.
He sounds like a modern entrepreneur.
He really was. And a polyglot. He spoke French, Italian, Turkish, Serbian, and Albanian. The house was known for being open to everyone. It was essentially a political salon.
A salon.
Yeah, the poor were fed there, sure, but political discussions happened there too. It was a fiercely patriotic Albanian household.
So Agnes is soaking all this in, the
Yes.
politics, the business, the money.
Exactly. She's watching her father debate Albanian independence. She's seeing money change hands, and she's seeing, crucially, her mother, Drana, opening the doors to the city's poor every single day.
Ah, okay. So the charity part comes from her mother.
It seems so. Drana used to tell Agnes, "My child, never eat a single mouthful unless you are sharing it with others." That was the family ethos.
It sounds idyllic in a way, wealthy but grounded.
It was, until the politics of the Balkans came knocking. And this is where the story pivots from a happy childhood to something closer to a noir thriller.
Oh.
You have to understand, being an Albanian nationalist in Skopje in 1919 was a dangerous game. The region was a powder keg.
And Nicolae was holding a match.
He was deeply involved in the movement to unite Kosovo with Albania. He went to a political meeting in Belgrade in 1919. He was healthy, strong, vibrant. He comes back home, and he collapses.
Just collapses.
He's rushed to the hospital, but he dies almost immediately.
Just like that, after a political meeting.
The official line was illness, maybe a hemorrhage, But the family, they never bought it for a second. Agnes's brother Lazar went to his grave convinced that their father was poisoned by Serbian agents.
Wow. So her father is essentially assassinated for his politics.
Yeah.
That changes the whole complexion of her childhood.
It does. It's a massive trauma.
Yeah.
Agnes is only 8 or 9 years old, and the impact on the family was immediate and devastating.
I can imagine.
They didn't just lose a father. They lost their financial pillar, Nicoli's business partner. Well, let's just say the assets mysteriously disappeared into the partner's pockets.
Oh, no.
The family went from wealth to near poverty overnight.
That's a brutal shift for a 9-year-old.
Oh.
From having servants and holding court to worrying about putting food on the table.
It is. And it shifted the dynamic entirely to her mother, Drana. Now, Drana was already religious, but after this, she became a rock.
She had to.
She raised the 3 children. Agnes was the youngest. With a firm hand, she turned to the church. The Sacred Heart Parish in Skopje became their second home. This is where Agnes starts to form her identity.
It almost sounds like boot camp for the soul.
That's a great way to put it. Drana was loving, but she was strict. Discipline, prayer, service, that was the daily routine. And in this environment, at age 12, Agnes starts feeling something else.
The first call, that's what she called it later, right?
Yes. At 12, she felt a vocation to religious life. Now, usually, kids that age are thinking about school or friends. Agnes was fascinated by stories of Jesuit missionaries who were working in Bengal, India.
Why Bengal? That seems so random for a girl in the Balkans.
Well, the Jesuits from her region were very active there. They would send letters back to the parish describing the work, the people, the landscape. Agnes would read these letters, look at the maps. India became this distant, romanticized destination of service. It represented the ultimate sacrifice.
It's wild to think of a 12-year-old in the 1920s fixated on Bengal. But she holds on to this for 6 years. And then at 18, she makes the move.
And this is the first major point of no return in her life. In 1928, she decides to become a missionary. She chooses the Sisters of Loreto.
And why them specifically?
Because they were an Irish order with missions in India, and she needed to learn English to teach there. It was a very practical choice.
There's a specific detail about this departure that really hit me when I was reading the biography. When she gets on that train in Skopje to leave for Ireland.
She knows.
She knows.
She knows, and her mother knows, that they will likely never see each other again.
And we have to pause on that.
Yeah.
Today, you move abroad, you have FaceTime, you have Zoom, you could hop a flight. In 1928,
it was a death of sorts. You were vanishing into the mission. She said goodbye to her mother and her sister, got on the train, and that was it.
that was the last time.
The last time. She never saw them again. Her mother died later. And her sister, but Agnes, now Sister Teresa, was in a cloistered world on the other side of the planet.
That level of sacrifice, cutting off your family at 18, it sets the stage for the kind of absolute, almost severe dedication she becomes known for.
Yeah, absolutely.
So she goes to Ireland, learns English quickly, which, by the way, is impressive in itself, and then ships out to India.
Yeah.
She arrives in Calcutta in 1929.
January 6, 1929. She takes her initial vows and becomes Sister Teresa, named after Thérèse of Lisieux, the patron saint of missionaries. But here is the massive misconception most people have. She didn't go straight to the slums.
Right. She was a teacher.
For nearly 20 years. She taught geography and history at St. Mary's School for Girls, and eventually she became the principal.
And this wasn't some poor, struggling school.
And not at all. This was a compound run by the Loreto sisters. It was behind high walls in the Enteley suburbs of Calcutta.
A European bubble, right?
Precisely. We need to understand the context of colonial India here. Inside the walls, it was manicured lawns, orderly classrooms. The girls she taught were mostly from somewhat better-off Bengali families or Anglo-Indians.
That was comfortable.
It was clean, it was safe, it was comfortable. She had tea, she had books.
But outside those walls, history was exploding.
The contrast was apocalyptic. While Sister Teresa was teaching geography, Calcutta was enduring the Bengal famine of 1943.
Oh, wow.
We're talking about millions of people starving to death. The British administration's policies had exacerbated a food shortage. Bodies were literally piling up on the sidewalks.
I've read descriptions of that time. People were fighting dogs for scraps of garbage. It's unimaginable.
It was hell on earth. And then you have the Great Calcutta Killings of 1946, the Hindu-Muslim riots. Thousands slaughtered in days. The gutters were running with blood.
And she's watching this from the window.
From the safety of the convent, she could see the smoke, hear the screams, see the bodies being carted away.
That must have been.
The tension between the safety of her life as a European nun and the absolute horror happening just feet away started to eat at her. She felt she was in the wrong place. She felt comfortable. And for her, comfort was the enemy.
Which brings us to the moment that changes everything. September 10th, 1946. Inspiration Day.
She's on a train again. This time she's going from Calcutta to Darjeeling for a spiritual retreat. And amidst the noise and the crowd of the train, and Indian trains are chaotic, crowded, sensory overload, she experiences what she called a call within a call.
A call within a call. It's poetic, sure, but let's ground this. Is she claiming she physically heard a voice, like a hallucination?
It's a great question, and one the church actually investigates thoroughly during canonization. She described it as enlocution.
Enlocution?
A theological term. It means an internal voice that was distinct from her own thoughts. It wasn't a hallucination in the psychiatric sense. She wasn't seeing things that weren't there, but the message felt external and authoritative.
Okay, so not a burning bush, but a distinct command. And what was the command?
The message was, "Come, be my light." The instruction was specific. Leave the safety of the Loreto convent and go live directly among the poor. To serve the poorest of the poor.
So not just to teach them.
No, but to live like them.
But you can't just walk out of a convent, can you? I mean, she's taken vows of obedience. That's basically breaking a contract with God.
It's worse than breaking a contract. It's mutiny. You don't just quit being a nun to become a freelancer. It's a bureaucratic nightmare.
Right.
She had to petition the Archbishop, Ferdinand Perrier, then it had to go to the Vatican. They were incredibly skeptical.
Why? I mean, it sounds like a good thing.
Think about it. A lone white woman wandering the slums of Calcutta in the late 1940s. It was incredibly dangerous. It was unheard of. They thought she would be killed, or worse. They thought she was having a nervous breakdown.
So it was a struggle.
It took her 2 years of lobbying.
2 years?
2 years of writing letters begging for permission. She was relentless. Finally, in 1948, Pope Pius XII grants her exclaustration,
Which is?
it's permission to live outside the cloister while remaining a nun, a very rare thing.
So she takes off the habit, the traditional heavy nun's habit,
Mhm.
and puts on the sari.
The white cotton sari with 3 blue stripes. This was a very deliberate choice. It was the cheapest cloth available. The blue stripes represented the Virgin Mary, but the sari itself, that was the dress of a poor Indian sweeper woman.
She's sending a message.
A very clear one. I am one of you now.
And she goes to Patna for a few months of basic medical training, literally learning how to bandage wounds and give injections. And then
Wow.
she hits the slums.
Yeah.
And the diaries from this time, they are raw.
They are heartbreaking. This is the part of the story that often gets skipped. It wasn't an instant success. She had no money, no home,
She was begging.
begging for food. She writes about the intense loneliness and the temptation, she wrote. The tempter kept on saying, "You have only to say the word and all that will be yours again."
She meant the convent.
Yes, the clean sheets, the regular meals, the safety of Loreto. She could have gone back at any moment. She just had to ring the doorbell.
But she didn't. She stayed in the dirt. And slowly, people started to join her.
Her former students from St. Mary's, they saw her in the slums, teaching children in the dirt, washing the wounds of the sick, and they were compelled. They were the first sisters.
Wow.
By 1950, the Vatican officially recognized the missionaries of charity, and they took a unique vow.
The fourth vow.
Right. Most religious orders take 3: poverty, chastity, and obedience. Missionaries of charity take a 4th: to give wholehearted free service to the poorest of the poor.
And poorest of the poor isn't just a slogan. She meant the people no one else would touch. This leads to the founding of Normal Friday.
The home for the pure of heart, or as the world knows it, the home for the dying.
Right.
This was established in 1952. It was located in an abandoned pilgrim hostel right next to the famous Palagat Kali temple.
Talk about symbolism. A Catholic nun setting up shop next to one of the most important Hindu temples in India. That must have ruffled some feathers.
There was massive friction at first. The Brahmins, the priests at the temple, were unhappy. They thought she was there to convert people. They wanted her out.
So what happened?
Well, the story goes that one of the priests contracted tuberculosis. He was dying, and no one would help him. Mother Teresa took him in, cared for him until he died. After that, the opposition, it just melted away.
And the mission of Normal Friday was specific.
Yes, it was a home for the dying. These were people picked up off the streets, literally being eaten by rats and maggots, rejected by hospitals.
And here is where we have to start distinguishing her work from standard medical care. Mother Teresa's philosophy was not necessarily to cure them, right?
Correct. Often they were too far gone. Her goal was to let them die with dignity. She wanted them to see a loving face before they passed.
She had that famous quote, "A beautiful death is for people who lived like animals to die like angels loved and wanted."
Exactly. And that philosophy is key to understanding everything that comes later, including the criticism. She saw her role as spiritual accompaniment, not just medical intervention.
They expanded fast after that. Shishu Bhavan for abandoned children.
And Shantinagar, a colony for lepers.
Leprosy, Hansen's disease.
It was a major stigma in India at the time. Families would throw sufferers out. Mother Teresa instituted mobile leprosy clinics. She touched them, she cleaned their wounds.
And in a caste-based society where these people were untouchables.
Seeing a white woman touching them was revolutionary. It was a powerful statement.
So by the 1960s, she's a local hero in India. But the world doesn't really know her yet?
Not really, no.
Until the BBC shows up.
Enter Malcolm Muggeridge. He was a famous British journalist, a bit of a cynic actually, who came to film a documentary in 1969 called Something Beautiful for God.
And this is where the miracle of light happens, right? This story is wild.
This is the moment that launched the myth. They were filming inside the home for the dying. It was dark, gloomy, small windows. The cameraman, Ken McMillan, thought the footage would be unusable.
Right.
He told Muggeridge, "It's too dark, we're not going to get anything."
But they kept rolling.
They kept rolling. McMillan had some new experimental film stock from Kodak that he was testing. When they went back to London and developed the film, the interior shots weren't dark. They were bathed in this soft, beautiful, luminous glow.
And Muggeridge said?
Muggeridge, who was looking for a spiritual experience, said it was divine light. He claimed it was a miracle of Mother Teresa's holiness illuminating the room.
And the cameraman, what did he say?
Chuckles. The cameraman said, "Mate, it's just the new Kodak high sensitivity film." He tried to explain the technical specs.
But the miracle story is better.
The miracle story is better. Muggeridge wouldn't hear it. He sold the divine light narrative to the world. The documentary was a smash hit. The book became a bestseller. Virtually overnight, Mother Teresa went from a local charity worker to a global superstar.
It's a classic example of media crafting the legend. The celebrity saint era begins. The 70s and 80s are just a whirlwind. She's meeting everyone.
Presidents, prime ministers, popes. She becomes untouchable. And in 1979, she gets the ultimate nod. The Nobel Peace Prize.
She accepts it. But in classic Mother Teresa fashion, she cancels the fancy banquet.
She did. She asked that the $192,000 budget for the dinner be sent to the poor in India. It was a brilliant PR move, but also genuinely consistent with her values. She said, "I cannot eat this food when my people are starving."
The speech she gave. That was the first crack in the universal admiration. I read the transcript, and honestly, if you didn't know the context, you'd think you were at a political rally.
It was a shock to the system. You'd expect a speech about poverty or war or hunger. She mentioned those. But the centerpiece of her Nobel acceptance speech was a fierce attack on abortion.
The greatest destroyer of peace today is abortion. That's the quote.
She framed it as a direct war by the mother against her own child. She said, "If a mother can kill her own child, what is left to prevent me from killing you and you killing me?"
That is intense.
Yeah.
For a secular audience, for the Nobel Committee in Oslo, that must have sucked the air out of the room.
It did. It cemented her status as a hero to the religious right and the pro-life movement, but it also put a target on her back for progressives and feminists. She wasn't just a humanitarian anymore, she was a combatant in the culture wars.
And she didn't shy away from politics. She was hanging out with Ronald Reagan, who gave her the Medal of Freedom. She met Princess Diana in New York in 1997.
And eerily, they died just days apart.
I know. That image of the two of them, Diana in her suit, Mother Teresa in her sari holding hands, was iconic. It was the meeting of the two most photographed women in the world.
It really was.
But she also rubbed shoulders with some very unsavory characters. And this leads us directly into the darker side of this story.
Right.
We've established the saint, we've established the icon, but now we have to unpack the criticism. Because starting in the 90s, the narrative started to fracture.
It did, and we have to give credit where it's due. A lot of this started with Christopher Hitchens. He was a polemicist, a militant atheist, and he decided to go after the one sacred cow no one else would touch.
The documentary Hell's Angel.
From 1994, yeah.
Hell's Angel. Subtle.
Hitchens argued that she wasn't a friend of the poor, she was a friend of poverty, that she glorified the suffering of the poor because she believed it brought them closer to God. He called her a ghoul.
But it wasn't just Hitchens throwing insults, right? There was medical evidence. This is where the Lancet comes in.
Yes. And for those who don't know, the Lancet is one of the most prestigious medical journals in the world. In 1994, Dr. Robin Fox, the editor, visited the homes in Calcutta.
Okay.
He went there expecting to see a hospice-think palliative care, morphine drips, pain management.
Comfort care, making the end easier.
Right. But what he saw horrified him. He described the care as haphazard. He noted that the sisters, who were wonderful, dedicated women, had almost no medical training.
So they didn't know what they were doing medically.
They couldn't distinguish between a patient who was dying of an incurable disease and a patient who just had a curable infection.
So people who could have been saved were just let die.
That was the implication. But the biggest criticism was pain management. Dr. Fox noted that they refused to use strong analgesics, no morphine, just aspirin or ibuprofen for people dying of terminal cancer.
Wait, aspirin? For bone cancer? That's like trying to put out a forest fire with a water pistol. Why? Was it a money issue?
That's the tragic irony. It wasn't money. By this point, the missionaries of charity had millions of dollars in the bank. They could have bought all the morphine in India.
So why not?
It was theology.
Theology.
Mother Teresa famously told a patient who was in agony, "You are suffering like Christ on the cross, so Jesus must be kissing you."
Oof. That is hard to hear.
And the patient replied, "Then please tell him to stop kissing me."
It highlights the fundamental disconnect. The world thought she was running a hospital. She thought she was running a gateway to heaven.
Precisely. She believed suffering was a gift, a participation in the passion of Christ. But, and here's the hypocrisy that critics point out, when Mother Teresa herself was sick.
Let me guess. She didn't go to normal Rite Aid to be kissed by Jesus.
She went to the Scripps Clinic in California. She went to top hospitals in Rome and New York. She received world-class palliative care and anesthesia.
Suffering for thee, but not for me. That's a tough look.
It is. And then there's the hygiene. Volunteers and doctors reported seeing needles being rinsed in cold tap water and reused.
Reused needles.
In the 80s and 90s.
Wait, this is the height of the HIV/AIDS crisis? That's medical malpractice 101.
It is. And when volunteers suggested boiling the needles to sterilize them, they were told, "There is no point. We don't have time." It was a disregard for basic science in favor of providence.
But again, you said they had millions of dollars. Where is the money going?
That is the multi-million-dollar question. There was almost zero financial transparency. The missionaries of charity didn't publish their accounts.
But we know money was pouring in.
Flooding in. But investigations, like one by the German magazine Stern, suggested that only about 7% of the donations went to direct care or medical upgrades in the homes.
7%. Where did the other 93% go?
Most of it was allegedly funneled to the Vatican Bank, or it was used to open new convents.
I see.
See, Mother Teresa was focused on missionary expansion. She wanted a presence in every country. She was opening houses in the Bronx, in the Soviet Union, in Africa. The money was building an empire of nuns, not hospitals.
So if you donated $100 thinking you were buying medicine for a sick kid in Calcutta, you were actually buying a plane ticket for a nun to open a branch in New Guinea.
Essentially, yes. And she wasn't picky about where the money came from, was she?
The dubious associations part. Let's talk about Charles Keating.
Charles Keating, the face of the savings and loan crisis in the U.S. He defrauded thousands of people out of their life savings.
He stole from grandmas.
He did, and he gave Mother Teresa $1.25 million and let her use his private jet.
Oh.
Now, when he was put on trial, Mother Teresa wrote a letter to the judge, Lancey Eso, the same judge from the O.J. Simpson trial, by the way.
No.
Yes, way. She wrote to Judge Eso asking for leniency. She said Keating had been kind and generous to the poor of God.
Did she know he stole the money?
The prosecutor, Paul Turley, wrote back to her. He sent a respectful but devastating letter. He explained exactly where the money came from, stolen from everyday people. He laid it out. The money you have was stolen, and he asked her to return it.
Did she write a check?
She never replied, and she never returned a cent.
That is damning. It really reinforces that idea that her loyalty was to the church and her mission, not necessarily to justice in the secular sense.
And speaking of loyalty to the church, we have to talk about the baptisms. This is a very sensitive topic in India, and rightly so.
The secret baptisms. I've heard rumors about this.
It's more than rumors. Multiple volunteers and former nuns, including Susan Shields, have alleged that they were instructed to ask dying patients Hindus and Muslims if they wanted a ticket to heaven.
A ticket to heaven. That's the phrasing.
That was how they framed it. If the dying person nodded, often in a semi-conscious state, delirious or just wanting comfort, the nun would place a wet cloth on their forehead, recite the baptismal formula quietly, and save their soul.
Without the family knowing, without the patient really understanding they were being converted to Christianity.
Exactly. To Mother Teresa, this was the ultimate act of kindness. She was snatching a soul from hell at the last second. To critics and to many Hindus and Muslims, it was a spiritual violation. It was predatory.
It recontextualizes the whole mission.
Yeah.
She wasn't a social worker who happened to be a nun.
Yeah.
She was a missionary who used social work as a vehicle for saving souls.
I am not a social worker. I don't do it for this reason. I do it for Christ. She said that herself repeatedly. We just chose to ignore it because the image of the humanitarian was more comfortable for us.
So we have the saint and we have the critic's target. But there's a third layer to Mother Teresa that didn't come out until after she died. And this, to me, is the most shocking part of the whole story.
You're talking about the letters.
The book, Come Be My Light.
Yes. She had asked for her private correspondence to be burned. She wanted her inner life to remain secret. The Catholic Church, in its wisdom, or perhaps looking for evidence of sainthood, decided to preserve it and publish it.
And what it revealed stunned everyone.
It really did.
She didn't believe, or at least she didn't feel it.
For almost 50 years, from the moment she started her work in the slums until her death, she lived in what she called darkness.
Listen to this quote from one of her letters to her spiritual director. It gives me chills. "The silence and the emptiness is so great. I look and do not see. I listen and do not hear. The place of God in my soul is blank."
Think about that. The world is looking at her face and seeing the radiance of God. She's winning the Nobel Prize. She's telling everyone Jesus loves you. And inside, she feels nothing.
Nothing.
She feels abandoned.
She even wrote, "I have no faith." That is heavy.
It's the dark night of the soul, a concept in Catholic mysticism. St. John of the Cross wrote about it. But for Teresa, it wasn't a phase. It lasted decades. She felt rejected by God.
How do you get up every morning at 4:30 a.m., wash lepers, deal with dying babies, and smile for the cameras if you feel like the sky is empty? That sounds like psychological torture.
That is the psychological mystery. Some psychologists would say it's cognitive dissonance, but she reframed it. She eventually came to believe that this emptiness was her way of sharing in Christ's suffering on the cross.
Specifically, the moment when Jesus asks, "My God, why have you forsaken me?"
Exactly. She decided that her feeling of abandonment was actually a sign of her closeness to Jesus because she was feeling what he felt. It became a spiritual union through absence.
It adds a tragic, almost Shakespearean depth to her character. She wasn't a simple, happy nun. She was a woman in profound spiritual agony who kept working anyway.
Whether you think she's a saint or a fraud, that level of discipline to act as if for 50 years is terrifyingly impressive.
It is. So she works until the very end. Her health declines, heart attacks, a pacemaker, pneumonia. And finally, on September 5, 1997, she dies at age 87.
The funeral in India was massive. A state funeral, gun carriage, the works. Usually that's reserved for prime ministers or Gandhis. It showed how deeply India had claimed her, despite the controversy.
The Vatican wasted no time.
No. Usually there's a 5-year waiting period before you can even start the sainthood process. Pope John Paul II waived it.
Right away.
Right away. He wanted her fast-tracked. He needed a modern saint.
But to be a saint, you need miracles. 2 of them. And this is where science and faith collide again. I want to get into the weeds of how they prove a miracle.
The process is fascinating. The Vatican has a medical board. They look for cures that are instantaneous, complete, and lasting with no scientific explanation.
So let's look at miracle #1, Beatification 2003. An Indian woman named Monica Bezra.
Monica Bezra had a large abdominal mass. The story the nuns tell is that on the anniversary of Mother Teresa's death, they placed a locket with Teresa's picture on Monica's stomach, prayed, and a beam of light shot out, and the tumor vanished.
That's the miracle version. What's the medical version?
Monica Bezra had been in the hospital for months. She was being treated for tubercular meningitis and an ovarian cyst. She was on strong anti-tuberculosis medication.
So the meds worked.
Her doctors, and initially even her husband, went on record saying, it wasn't a miracle, it was medicine. They said the cyst receded because the drugs worked. It took months, not an instant.
The hospital staff actually said they were pressured by the nuns to call it a miracle.
Correct. They said the Missionaries of Charity refused to give them her medical records initially, but the Vatican recognized it anyway. They needed a miracle, and they found one.
And the second miracle. This was for canonization in 2016.
A Brazilian man, Marcílio Andrino, in 2008. He had multiple brain abscesses due to a viral infection. He was in a coma, dying. The doctors were about to operate, but they couldn't intubate him properly. It looked like the end. His wife was praying to Mother Teresa. While he was on the operating table, the surgeon stepped out for a moment. When he came back, Andrino was awake, asking, "What am I doing here?" The pain was gone. The scans later showed the abscesses had receded significantly.
And medical experts couldn't explain that one.
That one was harder to debunk. It was deemed medically inexplicable by the Vatican's committee. Pope Francis recognized it in 2015.
And that paved the way. September 4, 2016, she becomes St. Teresa of Calcutta.
It was the culmination of a very specific narrative the church wanted to promote: a saint for the modern world, a saint of mercy.
So, here we are at the end of the journey. We've seen the young girl in Skopje watching her father die. We've seen the exhausted nun in the slums fighting rats. We've seen the global celebrity shaking hands with Reagan and the controversial figure accused of negligence and financial hoarding. How do we synthesize this?
I think we have to accept that she can be all of these things at once. Humans are messy.
But we can't let her off the hook, can we?
No. She built an empire of 4,500 nuns in 133 countries from absolutely nothing. She touched the untouchables, the lepers, the AIDS patients, when the rest of the world was terrified of them. She gave visibility to the invisible.
Yeah.
But her legacy is permanently scarred by the reality of the care she provided. The lack of painkillers, the hygiene, the questionable finances. Those aren't just haters talking, those are documented facts.
Right.
She was a woman of the 19th century living in the 20th. She believed in the redemptive power of suffering in a world that believes in the elimination of suffering.
Maybe her greatest miracle wasn't curing a tumor. Maybe it was forcing the world to actually look at the people it desperately wanted to ignore.
Even if her methods for helping them remain a subject of fierce debate, yes, I think that's a very fair way to put it.
It's a story that challenges your definition of good. Is good intentions enough? Or does impact matter more?
That is the question she leaves us with. And frankly, it's a question we should ask of every charity and every hero we put on a pedestal.
And on that provocative note, we're going to wrap up this deep dive.
Indeed. A heavy one today.
If you found this deep dive into the complexities of history fascinating, make sure to follow and subscribe to the channel History Titans. We're digging up the truth behind the legends every week, so hit that like button and share this with a friend who loves a good debate.
Until next time, keep questioning the narrative.
See you next time.